Good morning and welcome to the Morning Spotlight podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ham, coming to you as always from the Morning Spotlight studios in Morristown, New Jersey. We got a great guest today. She's a former two-sport Division I athlete in basketball and softball. She has a Master of Science degree in sports psychology and motor behavior from the University of Tennessee, and she's a mental skills coach with the Philadelphia Phillies. Hannah Huesman. Hannah, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here today.
Thanks for coming on. I knew you were going to wear the Phillies shirt, so I had to wear the Yankees shirt. I mean, that was just a given.
It's fine. It's fine. I can handle it. We split games yesterday, so it's fine. We can handle it.
Yeah. But the Yankees, they're doing pretty good right now. So
you're not wrong. I'm not going to deny that. I'm not going to pretend like that they're not. They're doing good.
Good. They're doing great. So they're playing again tonight. So we're recording this on the 6th. They're playing again tonight. So, we'll see what happens. But
we'll see. Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. So I want everyone to kind of learn a little bit more about you before we actually kind of get into the stuff that I want to talk about. So why don't you take us through your background, how you wound up here with the Phillies, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I'm born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee, and played sports my whole life. And like you said, I went to the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga for my undergrad. And I actually played basketball my freshman year. And then I actually switched sports and played softball my sophomore, junior, senior year. And I studied exercise science was my undergrad major. And then I took an elective class my senior year, and it was in sports psychology. And I was like, what is this? How can I learn more about this? How have I never heard of this? Why aren't we using this on my team?
Right.
And so really lit the fire under me, and ended up pursuing a master's degree, like you said, in sports psychology and motor behavior, which is a really fancy way of saying how the mind and the body work together to produce optimal performance, which is exactly what I do on a daily basis. I work with athletes and all types of performers, not just athletes, on creating the best version of themselves by training their mental aspect of their game. Whereas, everybody's used to training the physical aspect of your game and grind it out, work hard, work out, conditioning, all of that good stuff that you have to have. And common mistakes and things that are left out is the mental aspects of the game. So I get to kind of remind people to focus on the mental aspects of their game, create awareness, help create self-evaluators and all of that good stuff. But I had a couple internships, worked in Hilton Head, Florida, New York, and now this is my third year with the Phillies right now as a mental skills coach. So now I get to do all of that good stuff with a specific group of baseball players. And so That's what I do on a daily basis. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So do you work with the Phillies? Do you work with one of their minor league affiliates? Is it, an all-encompassing kind of thing?
Yeah. So I love that you asked that question, because a lot of people just think, Major League Baseball is just Major League Baseball. And it is, but there's a whole other world of minor league baseball. So we actually have, I think, 9 teams. And so I work with our AA team down. So I work with, it's about 6 teams. And we have 4 mental skills coaches on our staff. And I don't speak Spanish, so I work predominantly with our English speaking players. So it's growing. We do have 4, which is really, really cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, I know you mentioned a little bit of it, but what are some of the duties of a mental skills coach? Is it mental health stuff, dealing with anxiety, different things like that? Or is it more I know you were saying before, how the mind and the body work together, but explain that a little bit more.
Great question. So I think one of the things that it's our due diligence to do is to educate. And so technically my title is mental skills or mental performance coach, right? So you have mental performance and you have mental health. And although there's a fine line between both of them, they're pretty separate in what they actually are. So mental health is kind of what you were alluding to, right? It's clinical anxiety, eating disorders, depression, suicidality, right? All of those more heavy hitter things.
Right.
And mental performance is more confidence, composure, resiliency, motivation, enjoyment, even just performance anxiety. And so I get to do the mental performance side of that, which is kind of the lighter side, a more fun side. It's more helping, whereas mental health is more fixing, right? We have an issue, we have to figure out what's going on, whereas we are like mental performance coaches, right? We're just like another coach, just like you have a hitting or a pitching coach or a speech coach, right? You have a mental skills coach. So we get to focus on all of the actual performance-based mental issues, whatever you want to call them, instead of the heavy hitting stuff. But as a mental performance coach, you're also trained to know the difference and to know when, okay, maybe this was performance anxiety and now it's turning into more clinical anxiety and it's affecting like everyday life. And so we have to refer out and make sure that the player always gets the help that they need. So, but yeah, it's mental performance. So anything from choking under pressure to getting really nervous before a game to breathing techniques to being in the present moment, to self-talk, to all that good stuff. That's what my daily conversations are about.
Gotcha. So can you give us like an example of like a task that you would make someone do? You know, like you could have like a pitching coach has a guy throw a bullpen and, you know, spin some curveballs or something. So like maybe something that you would do with a player.
Yeah. So just off the top of my head, I would probably say routines. And practicing routines is, although it's almost like pairing physical with a mental skill, right? It's like you have to mentally prepare for a physical skill. And so let's make sure we're checking in on our routines on a daily basis. Like, do you have a routine? Have you ever thought about having a routine? What is your routine? And are you actually executing your routine? And then like, is the routine working or is it not? Do we need to make adjustments or do we not need to make adjustments? And that's the coolest part of our job is every human being is different. There's not one routine that works for everybody, right? And you yourself may have a bunch of different routines throughout your game, right? Pre-game routine, during game routine, post-game routine, off-day routine, right? All of these different things that you have to figure out what works best for you. And that's something that we help. And we try to figure out what do you need to do in order to create the best version of yourself and in order to give yourself the highest chance of success possible, right? Because success isn't always guaranteed, but we can do everything in our power to set you up for the highest chance of success. Right. And so that's what I try to do. And so routines are like a great, like, okay, what are your routines? Is your routine off? Are you not performing the way you want to perform? Let's check your routines, right? Routines create consistency, which everybody wants to be consistent, which is, I think what happens so much in mental skills, right? People are like, I want to be confident. Great. I want you to be confident too, right? I want to be consistent. Do you know why? Like, do you actually need to be confident to perform well? Do you need routines? And once you know those answers, how do you do it? And I think that's the depth and the bottom of the iceberg of mental skills coaching instead of just like raw motivational speaking, right? It's like, yes, you have a motivating piece, but it's so much more than that. And like, we don't want this to be temporary fix. We want this to be long lasting fix and something that can impact your life and your career.
Gotcha. Very interesting. So, like you mentioned before, when you were kind of giving your background and stuff that, you know, like when you were playing, I think we're around the same age when you were playing, like I played college baseball and like mental skills and mental, you know, performance was not a thing. Like we didn't talk about that. It was like, you know, I would go out and one day I would stink and another day I'd be good. And I like had no idea why. Right. And then like I coached college baseball for a little bit after that. So then like I started just learning more about, you know, like Ken Revizza stuff and like all that kind of things. So like I kind of had like, I was like, man, like this would have been really cool to have back then. And it seems like a lot of major league teams are trying to make that move into doing more stuff like this. So I'm assuming because you're just like a regular coach that players are required, I guess, or just like it's part of their routine for lack of a better word. Right?
Yeah. So it changes with every organization. But the way we do it is, at least in the minor leagues, it is required. So it's about once a month. You check in with the mental skills coach, whether you're playing really well or doing poorly. Like you're just going to check in because just like you want to check in with coaches, like we want to have proactive approaches. We want to be able to give you tools and tips and tricks that you need before shit hits the fan. Are we allowed to say that on here?
Well, yeah, we'll leave it in.
But like, you know, before things go awry, right? We would love to equip you with the tools that you need. And so that's why we're going to meet. And you got to build a relationship too, right? It is coaching, but it's almost like a deeper level of coaching. And it's not counseling or therapy, but it's a relationship that requires openness and honesty and vulnerability. And that in itself, like that safe space that's needed to get to that deeper level of who you are and what works for you, I think is what creates those opportunities for that coaching. So it's a really fine balance of figuring out who that person is and also coaching them. Like we're here to help you get better, you know, which part of that is venting and getting it off your chest, but then we're going to find a way to make it work and help you grow and be the best you can be.
Right. So do you see any, like, do you ever run into roadblocks with maybe like, because at least in my opinion, like being around baseball for a big portion of my life and people at different levels of the game, like I feel like some players that get to like that level are, like they've been good for forever. Like there's a reason why they've made it that high into a major league system. Is there ever like any pushback or any just kind of like, this is stupid, or maybe like veteran, like old school veteran coaches? Or is there ever any like issues with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think just like in anything, it's never going to be like 100% everybody's bought in on mental skills, right? We have guys who are not just us, but like you have guys who don't like to work out, you have guys who don't like to stretch, you have guys who don't like to do their arm care, but they know they have to do it, so for sure, there's always going to be resistance. But the funny part about mental skills is like you can force stretching on people. You can't really force mental skills on people. Like
Right.
if you don't want to work on your mental skills, then if I force it, it could actually do the opposite. Like instead of you buying in, eventually you could like resist it hardcore and it could do more damage than good. So it's a real finicky dance we have to do of like making sure the timing is right. Are they ready to accept what we have to say? If they're not, how can we put it in layman's terms? And how can we always let them know our door's open and we're supporting them even if they're not ready? That way, the moment they are ready, like there's no hesitation that they're going to come talk to us.
Right.
But no doubt, yeah, there's people, there's old school, there's I've never had a mental skills coach and I've done just fine up until here. And we also challenge them, we're like, you're right, and you've made it here. What if you did this and you could be even better? Like,
yeah, right,
what if you
right.
could make it to the big leagues faster? Or what if you could stay in the big leagues longer? Or stay in the minor leagues shorter amount, all of that. And so
Right.
it's usually, people are very open because that's one of the things about elite level athletes is they're always trying to find ways to get better. And so usually it's not a super hard sell, but there's always going to be people who are like, it's okay. So I don't
Right.
take it personally.
Good. That's good though.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So speaking of, I guess this is a decent segue. So speaking of roadblocks, right? So you're obviously a woman working for a major league team. We had our first woman coach with the San Francisco Giants, Alyssa Nacken, which was obviously a huge thing. Other major or professional sports have seemed to be like a little bit further ahead, still be like behind general times, but a little bit further ahead of Major League Baseball. So maybe talk about like your experiences, working in a professional sports program.
Yeah. You're definitely a sore thumb. You stick out like no other. I'm also 5'11", so I can't really hide amongst the players and long hair. So you stand out, but no, I've kind of gotten used to it. And this question comes up a lot, but I think it is challenging to get your foot in the door as a female, just because it is a male-dominated world, and typically there are males filling these positions. And so when you see a female, it throws people off a little bit. But I think if you have people who are open and willing, and you get these conversations and you get your foot in the door, and then you get into the door, and then you do your job, and then they notice, okay, you actually have something to offer and bring to the table, and then I think it could potentially become an advantage,
Right.
especially in my role, because I'm in a trusting, building relationships position. And sometimes it's easier for males to build relationships and trust with females and be more vulnerable about their feelings and honesty with what's actually going on than what they would with a man, because, they don't want to be seen as weak or
it's a guy
not confident.
thing.
Yeah, totally. The man
Right.
box thing.
Yeah.
And so I try to use that as an advantage, right? It's like, this is a safe place. I will not judge you, and I do not judge you for no matter what you're going to say, what you're experiencing, what you're feeling. It's all normal. And so I think there's certain ways you can use it as an advantage, but it's definitely difficult. There's crazy stories. You can't go in this one door because that leads to the clubhouse, or you have to be careful when you're doing this. And, there's unique setups. Sometimes the food's set up in the clubhouse. And so it's like, you got to send somebody in to go get food for you. And like, it's these daily things that people don't really understand. And like, you get so used to it, right? I'm on year 3 that like, it's like, I don't even think about it anymore. But like my first year, I'm like on my toes all the time and worrying about where I'm looking, where I'm walking, how I'm standing, all of these things that you don't even know. You don't even know all the little things, but it's been really cool how open armed they are and how they're trying to make it work. Sometimes we fail, sometimes it's great. But they're not, the Phillies are great. Like, and we have We have 2 female strength coaches. We have 2 female dietitians. We have some front office females. We have our head of education is a female. So like we're growing in numbers, which has been really cool. When I joined, I think there was like 3 of us, and now there's probably 9 or 10 of us. And so I think it's going to continue going in that direction. So I'm lucky to be a part of an organization who is like super open and all about it. So
that's great.
Great.
But this wasn't, so you had an internship with the Pirates before this, right?
Yeah.
And so how long ago was that?
So that was in 2015. That was right after I got out of grad school.
Okay.
And that was fun too, because I was the only female there. And so I was like
head
to toe.
Totally.
Yeah, totally. There was like one like handicap bathroom that became my bathroom in my locker room. And guys would still go in there and I'm like, that's mine, and like I'd give them shit about it. And but like I was in like head to toe men's gear, like dry fit t-shirts, long shorts, like the same shoes that they were wearing, just part of the experience. But again, even there, they were like, we're not used to this, but we're going to figure it out. Like, what do we need? What do you need? And trying to make it work. And it's tough. It's like, because you are in their world and it's a balance of sticking up for what you believe in and like making it equal, but also like knowing like, I didn't come into this world to like change all of your ways to make it fit for me. Like I'm also working on fitting into your world because, and it's challenging with my position because, my whole role is for them to be open and honest and be themselves with me. So like if they come in and I'm offended by cursing or offended by dip or offended by anything that they do, then, and I start calling them on it, then they're not going to want to be themselves and comfortable around me. So like, it takes a certain part of like you to be like, I'm okay with certain things, but then also when they're being idiots, I'm like, hey, come on. Like, I also challenge them, but there's a way to do it. It's really finicky and it's really hard to figure that out. And you definitely have to have tough skin, and it's interesting to say the least.
Yeah, definitely sounds interesting. So I want to talk about Mental Sweat Mondays. So that's actually how I think someone that in my network on LinkedIn liked one of yours at one point. And then that's how, like I found you, and then I would watch them and whatever. So why don't you take us through like how that started and like usually like the messages and stuff like that you try to get through to people?
Yeah. So Mental Sweat Monday is a 1-minute video that I post every Monday on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter now. And I started it about 1.5 years ago. So I started it in January of 2019. And it kind of came about just, I always had people asking like, what is a mental performance coach? Like, what exactly do you do? How do you do it? The usual questions. And I was trying to figure out a way to bring to light to kind of everyday, like whether you're a high performer or a business person or whatever you are, like if you're a human being, you're performing, which means you can enhance your mental performance. Just like everybody can improve their physical performance, you can be working on your mental performance too. And so I just wanted to bring awareness to everyone, right? That's the whole gig. It's a minute, so it's not a ton of information. It's not super in-depth and detailed. It's quick hitting points that hopefully gets you thinking about, am I working on my mental game every single day? Like, am I checking in mentally? Am I working on it? Am I getting stronger? Am I doing anything about the mental aspects of my performance? And that's really where it stemmed from. And obviously, like mental sweat, I wanted to compare it to just like you have to break a mental sweat every day. That's what everybody tells us to do. And to stay healthy, that also don't forget about breaking a mental sweat too. And so that's kind of how that came to be. And it's been fun and challenging, and it's quick hitting points. And again, it's just to serve as a reminder. So like, did you set a goal today? Did you take your deep breaths today? Did you have your moment of silence today? Did you challenge yourself today? Did you get out of your comfort zone today? Like kind of things like that. But yeah, it's been really fun. It's been really challenging. It's kept me on my toes and outside my comfort zone, because it's not easy to get in front of a camera and film that and be enthusiastic every time. And I have people message me like, you're so positive. And I'm like, you do not know me, but I'm glad that's the message you're taking away. Like, because I'm very real, and it's incredibly challenging and incredibly hard. But if that can be an ounce of hope, an ounce of motivation, an ounce of like, take care of yourself, then to me, that's doing the job that I wanted it to do. So really just spreading awareness around mental performance and making sure you're matching your physical strain with your mental strain and trying to keep up with it on the mental side.
Yeah. So do you have people like reaching out? Like you said, people are reaching out to you. Like I mean, and it seems like it's very well received, right?
Yeah. 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 And that's what keeps me going too, because do not get me wrong. Like it is hard. It is hard to do it and keep going. And like every now and then I'm like, are people really hearing this? Are people really impacted by this? Like, do they want this? And then almost every day, I'll get some kind of a message just saying, wow, I just stumbled upon this. Like, thank you so much. This is exactly what I needed. Or every time you post this, I feel like you're speaking directly to me. And like, it's really cool, the impact that it's been making. So that keeps me going. So that's encouraging for sure.
Definitely. So basically every week for almost a year and a half now, you've been posting these. Is it hard to think of like what you're going to post that week? Like, I know you're a professional, so I don't want that to be insulting, but like,
no,
you know, like, I do stuff like this and it's hard to think of like, well, who do I want to talk to, you know, this week, or what do I want to do next week or whatever. So, you know, it comes right out of your head.
Yeah, no, it definitely doesn't just come right out of my head. People ask me that question all the time and I'm like, they're like, do you run out of content? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Every week I run out of content. Like, because like it's not like mind-blowing information, right? It's all just different ways of framing different things. But no, I get inspired by conversations I have with people, like even like being on a podcast, like it'll spark something. I'm like, oh yeah, I wanted to talk about this, and just jot a note down, or like even something that I'm struggling with, right? Like I tweeted the other day something about like, don't forget why you do what you do. And like, that was for me, like, because I was struggling with some things, and it's like, don't forget the reason why you chose to do this and why you love it so much. And the adversity that you face is normal and frustrations are normal, but don't forget the core of why you did it. And so some of it's like me kind of pumping me up, and knowing that if I'm experiencing this, then I know other people out there are experiencing it. And I think it's all about being in tune with what are you experiencing. And I'm always talking to people about what they're experiencing. And so I get a lot kind of thrown on my plate. And so it's not too difficult to come up with ideas, but every now and then I'm like, I got nothing. And I think there's been a couple of times I've gone on there and been like, I don't want to be doing this right now, but I'm doing it anyway. And like, that's the message for the day, right?
That's a good message. Yeah.
Right. It's like, sometimes you don't want to do something, but do it anyway. And I was like, boom, there's my message. Great. And like, you look a mess. I was on a plane. It was like delayed for like 8 hours that day. It was a horrible day, but we got it out. Right. And we did it. And so it's kind of, I try to make it as natural and as real as possible, because I know people yearn for realness and yearn for honesty and that human connection. And so it's not this, facade of like a perfect life. It's like, hey, this is the stuff we deal with on a daily basis. And sometimes it sucks and sometimes it's hard. And here's a little tip to try to get you through it.
Right. So I don't know why, but this just kind of like jogged something in my brain. So obviously, like the way that the major league season is set up right now, there is no minor league season, because it's all shut down. So like, obviously that comes with its own issues and stresses and different things like that. So like, has your role changed this year? I mean, are you still doing the same kind of stuff? Are you still communicating with those, minor league players on their stuff that they should be doing? I would imagine, right? Yeah.
It's pretty much the same gig, but it's all virtual. So like, just like we would try to check in with them once a month, like that's our goal right now. And sometimes it's a little sporadic just because it is a lot of Zoom calls and FaceTimes and phone calls and texts and all that. But yeah, it's been just as busy as a normal season, and maybe even a little busier just because of the extra hardship on your mental health and your mental well-being, and even just wanting to connect with human beings because you've been locked in a house for so long.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like that's a huge piece, right? Like we're not like, forcing mental skills down people's throats. We're just checking on people and like, how are you doing? And like, and it's turning into longer conversations just because, people haven't had connection, and like, even just talking to family members and like friends, it's like conversations are turning into longer, more meaningful conversations because like we're yearning for that. And like, we all want human connection. And so, yeah, it's same workload, maybe even busier and more Zooms, and Zooms wipe me out more than normal meetings. So.
I agree with that. Like I am 100% on board with that because like after a day of Zooms, like between work and this stuff and all that, I mean, I'm toast by the end of the day.
Yeah. I think it's because you can like, I was thinking about this other day. I think it's because you can like see yourself. And so you're so worried about like how you're presenting yourself and like making sure you look okay and you're talking clearly and you're hearing clearly and no distractions. Whereas like if you're in a meeting, there's not a mirror right in front of you of how, so you're just like sitting there paying attention, kind of wandering. But like when you're on a Zoom, you're like locked in.
Yeah,
here we are. And like after an hour, your head's hurting, like, what's going on? And you're like, well, you've been staring at a computer screen and you've been sitting all day and you've probably been hunched over, and it's like, it's brutal. And so a big piece of like staying sane has been like, go outside,
Yeah.
do a lap outside, feel sunshine
Right.
on your face, like literally, and see if that changes your mood or your day. And we've gotten really good feedback on that. But it's like, it does. It freaking wipes you out, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're going to move the show into our closing segment, Under the Spotlight. Okay. So we do this for every show, whether it's real estate or not. So we're going to put you under the spotlight, and you're going to have to give us one takeaway. Like if somebody's listening, the people listening to this show, if they could take one thing away from this episode, what would you want them to take away? So you're under the spotlight. What do you got for us?
Okay. I would say, I don't think we talked about this, but I'm going to say it on here. I'm going to say, cause it's my go-to line in mental performance, and it's stop listening to yourself and start talking to yourself.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. Because so many times you have all of these negative thoughts that just flood your head, right? We have a natural negative bias as human beings. We're naturally programmed to notice all of the bad going on around you. And so instead of just like not paying attention and just letting these thoughts run rampant in your head, talk to yourself. Tell yourself what you need. Tell yourself you need to go outside. Tell yourself you're doing a good job. Tell yourself to take a break. Tell yourself whatever it is you need to hear instead of listening to all the negative that continuously pops up into your head, because it's normal for that to happen.
Yeah.
So instead of listening to yourself, talk to yourself.
No, I like that. So before I move into like the closing thing, just because now I want to talk even more. This is the closing segment. So we a few episodes ago we had Ricardo Zulueta, who is he's the founder of Fukit clothing line. So it's Fukitt. And like he's like a mental health advocate, has a foundation, like suicide prevention thing and all that kind of stuff. And it's like similar to what you were just saying. Like obviously that brand name, it's like a little bit like shocking because you want to say fuck it, right?
Yeah.
So but his whole thing is just like you say fuck it before you do something, because then you're just like kind of similar to what you were saying, like talk to yourself, just say I'm just gonna do this, or I'm just gonna whatever it is. So it was interesting.
Fuck it is one of my favorite sayings. If you ask any of my players, fuck it or fuck that is one of my favorite things. It really is. I have a bit of a sailor's mouth, but that's okay.
It's okay.
But yeah, I love that. I love it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for everybody listening, I will put Hannah's contact information in the show notes. That way, like if you want to reach out, you want to learn more, you want to actually start watching those Mental Sweat Mondays, all that stuff will be there. Hannah, I really appreciate you coming on and doing this with us today.
Heck yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was a good time.
Yeah, definitely. And then for everybody listening, again, make sure if you have any things you want us to talk about, if you want to be a guest on the Morning Spotlight, email us at themorningspotlight@gmail.com or go to themorningspotlight.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.